friends, and welcome to this video on how I wrote a successful personal statement that got me offers to study biology from the University of Oxford, Imperial College London, UCL, the University of Bath, and the University of Edinburgh. I'm still trying to figure out how to edit YouTube videos, so this video is going to be some slides and my voice just in the background. And with that said, let's get started. The first thing that I want to talk about is the importance of taking advice from a variety of good, trustworthy sources that are tailored to your university and degree. For example, Russell Group universities require a more academic rather than vocational personal statement, and medicine applications also look for what you gain from work experience, for example. Ideally, you would get this advice from admissions tutors, professors, and current students, which you can find, for example, on department websites, YouTube channels, Instagram pages, and also attending open days. Also, the YouTube channels and Instagram pages of current students. The Jesus College Oxford admissions videos by Dr. Matt Williams are also particularly incredible, I think, and I would highly recommend you go watching them. When coming up with this presentation, I wanted to create an analogy or visual metaphor that I thought would really capture the essence of what I think it is to prepare and write a personal statement. So I created this, and hopefully you'll be able to see how the ideas from this analogy link into the actual process of writing a personal statement. So imagine you are a young adventurer and now know which continent or area you want to explore. Like any young adventurer, you have a role model who you look up to and decide you want to be like them. So you pack up your things and set off on your own journey, trying to be like them, trying to make your own discoveries. On your adventures, you don't follow a map that someone else has already designed for you, but instead you follow your compass. And whenever you find something interesting, you investigate it further using the famous techniques and methodology of your role model. One of the most important things that you bring along on this journey is your adventurer's notebook. In this notebook, you write down everything, what you were struck by, what you were fascinated about, your observations, thoughts, hypotheses. Throughout your adventures, and especially once you come back from your travels, you continue spending more time thinking over everything you encountered, trying to find out ways that it all connects together and figuring out why exactly your adventure and research were important. Eventually, you begin writing the manuscript of a book on your adventures. This book is personal to you and your adventures, and from reading this book, your readers will not only be fascinated by the inner workings of your mind and your thought processes, but get a sense of what your worldview is and your perspective regarding your area of exploration. So, what does the process of preparing and writing a personal statement look like? It can be divided into 4 key stages. First is figuring out your subject or subject area, then is going on your own supercurricular journey, then is writing your personal statement, and finally, editing your personal statement till you get to the final draft. In this video, I'll be sharing advice and lessons I learned about the supercurricular journey, and then writing and editing the personal statement. We'll be covering the purpose of the personal statement, so you know what it is you're trying to produce, how to stand out with your personal statement, inspiration and ideas for your own supercurricular journeys, and also ways to engage with your subject. Then we'll be covering the structure of the personal statement, how to make it personal, and finally, editing and redrafting your personal statement. To make it more helpful, I'll also be sharing what I did on my own biology supercurricular journey, and then going through my own personal statement. So, what is the purpose of the personal statement? As Dr. Matt Williams said, the purpose of the personal statement can be distilled down into answering these 3 questions. First, why do you want to study the degree? AKA, why do you love your subject? AKA, what are your aspirations? Then, what have you done to evidence your enthusiasm, love, and passion for the subject? Finally, do you know what you're getting yourself in for? AKA, do you know what your degree and university-style learning entails? And so, can you give the tutors confidence that you can hit the ground running from day one? But here is the thing, a lot of people can actually provide good answers to these questions, so you really need to go above and beyond in your supercurricular journey and personal statement to really wow the tutors. And here are some ways you can do so. 1. Making your personal statement personal. I'll go over this in more detail later. 2. Pretending to be a university student, because what's the best way of showing the tutors that you're ready for this degree and will thrive in studying it? Quite literally, by pretending you're already studying the degree, by pretending to be a university student, faking it till you make it. 3. Taking initiative with your own supercurricular journey, not just reading a book or researching a specific topic only when or because a teacher tells you to do so, but exploring topics and areas yourself because you are curious about them. 4. Showing genuine enthusiasm and love for your subject. I think people can just sense and tell when this is the case and when this isn't. 5. Thinking independently and critically, because a big part of studying something at a degree level is engaging with points of controversy where there are several alternative viewpoints and coming to your own conclusion. 6. Displaying the skills and attributes tailored to your course. Researching how students are assessed and trying to display similar things. For example, if you're studying biology, writing essays, giving presentations, making scientific posters, reading undergraduate level textbooks, research papers, processing and analyzing data, and displaying a good understanding of the scientific process, the scientific method. So now let's go into the supercurricular journey. The supercurricular journey is the process of pretending to be a university student and exploring your subject beyond what is covered at school. Think of it like a series of exciting adventures, explorations into different topics and areas of your subject. Be curious, have fun, and truly enjoy the process. And as you go along, make notes, but also make them personal. Write down your observations and questions, your thoughts, your epiphanies, any further questions you have. One of my biggest pieces of advice when it comes to the supercurricular journey is starting early. By starting early, you give yourself the time and headspace to truly immerse yourself in the supercurricular journey and enjoy the process rather than finding it really stressful. Starting early also gives you the chance to really sit with, understand, think over, and engage with your subject. It gives you the chance to truly think critically and independently, and the opportunity to develop much more sophisticated and personal thoughts and perspectives. You'll also have the opportunity to explore a much wider diversity of interrelated topics, meaning the connections you'll make in your personal statement will be more authentic and sophisticated. Finally, starting early and exploring a much wider range of topics will also help you with interviews because you'll have a lot more to talk about and a much deeper appreciation for your subject. Starting early will also make the whole application process a lot less stressful because you'll be able to make going on the supercurricular journey a sustainable habit and balance it with school much more effectively. Starting early will also give you enough time to write and edit your personal statement. For me personally, I started my supercurricular journey the April before applying to university. So, how do you start the supercurricular journey? I think the best way to go about it is to really embrace your inner child's curiosity and fascination. Start with the big questions you have about your subject and go on a quest to answer them. Another great way to start a new path of exploration is by beginning to go about your day and viewing the world through a more critical lens, kind of like a scientist, taking note of any interesting observations that you have, creating your own hypotheses, and then just continuing to ask why until you either find the answer or get to a point where you're somewhat of a mini expert in that topic. In addition to following these big childlike questions and making observations in the real world, you can create systems and habits that will allow you to continue learning and asking questions. For example, on my journeys to and from school, I listened to biology podcasts, read news articles or books about biology, and when I came home from school and was eating a snack, I watched biology documentaries. And the key idea is to build systems and habits that make it really accessible to follow your curiosity and explore new topics of interest. And this will help you build a foundational understanding and appreciation for your subject. And it will also really enhance your enthusiasm and passion for your subject because it will give you the opportunity to really experience those wow moments. I watched a lot of David Attenborough documentaries and I regularly listened to the Big Biology podcast, which really kickstarted my supercurricular journey. Loads of people also recommend the very short introduction books as a starting point or stepping stone in their supercurricular journey. I also got a free trial of the New Scientist magazine for a month of my phone, and before that I borrowed copies from my school's library, and I really just tried to make the most out of all the free resources that I had available to me, which I personally think is more impressive than spending large amounts of money on different experiences and courses and stuff like that. Another big thing I really recommend is going to or starting a school society about your subject and beginning to talk about your subject with your friends and family. Not only will this deepen your knowledge, but it will also help you slowly build the skill of talking about your subject in an academic way, which could really help with interviews. After the initial exploration stage, we come to the stage of pretending to be a university student. And this is where things really start to kick in. By this point in each of your mini supercurricular adventures, you will have gotten a beginner's level understanding of the different topics and areas you've explored. For the topics you are most curious and passionate about, you can now begin to engage with the concepts in a way that a university student would. And this will be different for different degrees and universities, but here are some examples of what I did as I pretended to be an Oxford biology student. Firstly, I knew I would be attending lots of lectures at Oxford, so I tried to attend a healthy amount of free biology talks. These not only enhanced my understanding and enthusiasm for biology, but it also helped me get more familiar with data interpretation and the scientific process, which helped me with my interviews. I also knew that I would have to read undergraduate level texts, so for a few of the topics I was really interested in, I read further about in research papers that I had free access to and chapters of undergraduate level textbooks. What I found was that my local library didn't have copies of the undergraduate level books I wanted to read, so I just read free Kindle samples of it. And reading chapters rather than the whole book made it a lot easier for me to engage with the ideas rather than stressing out about remembering hundreds of pages. I also learned that I would be writing a biology essay every week, so I looked into different essay competitions that were being run by Oxford colleges and other organisations. In the end, I didn't enter any of these competitions, but I decided to just write an essay for the sake of it, since that was less stressful for me. I also learned that I would be assessed on presentation and scientific posters, so I presented a presentation on coral reef ecology at my school's biology society. Finally, and probably the best thing that I did, was applying for and attending a free summer school. In my case, Oxford's Woodham College Climate Change Summer School. This access and outreach program completely changed the trajectory of my application, I think. It was the closest experience I had to living and exploring biology as a university student. It gave me the opportunity to attend lectures, collaborate with others to present a topic we researched about, and have discussions about my subject with new friends and academics, all of which I was able to talk about in my personal statement. When applying for this summer school, I also had to write a mini personal statement, which helped me when coming to write the real thing. During the summer school itself, we had sessions that gave us so much support and guidance when it came to writing our personal statements as well. Dr. Hugh Monroe, who is the Access and Outreach Officer at Woodham College, even offered to give us feedback on drafts of our own personal statements after the summer school. Having the opportunity to discuss biology so extensively helped me with interviews, and having the opportunity to make friends who were also applying to study biology at Oxford was incredible, because it meant we could support and cheerlead each other on in our applications. One of the biggest things, though, I think, was how the summer school gave me the opportunity to really picture myself studying at Oxford. The summer school and all the incredible people I met running and taking part in it helped me believe in myself and helped me believe I could get in, which made all the difference. Attending an open day also helped me envision myself being able to get in and study at Oxford. It made the whole thing seem a lot more tangible and something that could actually happen. There are so many incredible access and outreach programs you can apply for, run by different colleges, universities, and organisations. For example, Pembroke College runs Oxnet and Pembroke Scholars, Oxford runs the Unique Summer Schools, Target Oxbridge is also an incredible programme, and the Sutton Trust runs lots of summer schools working with many different partner universities. And some great ways you can discover these opportunities and access programs and talks are through following and looking on university, college and department websites, Instagram pages, YouTube channels. Also, the Royal Society for your subject probably has many free talks and experiences and opportunities you can take part in. For example, the Royal Society of Biology runs so many events around and during Biology Week in October every single year. I attended their Biology Stars and Biology Champions Access and Outreach program every year since year 10. And during this whole supercurricular journey, I really recommend you write down all your thoughts, questions, and ideas in a notebook or notes app, like the adventurous notebook from the analogy. This will really help you engage with your subject, link ideas together, and begin writing your personal statement, since you'll have everything you could talk about in one place. And here are some frameworks and questions I asked myself that really helped me engage with my subject during my supercurricular journey. First, what is the argument being presented? Is it convincing? What is the supporting evidence? Are they conclusive? And are there any alternative ideas and views to explore? What have I learned or realized? How is my perspective changed? Why is this topic important? What problem is this trying to solve? How does this relate to where my subject is currently at? How does this relate to the wider world, the past, the present, and the future? How does this compare and contrast with other ideas I've come across? What do I find particularly interesting and exciting? What sparks the most joy? What do I want to learn more about? Which really helped me guide my supercurricular journey, kind of like the compass in the adventurer's analogy. And then, most importantly, which I learned from Dr. Matt Williams, what do I think? which really helped me make my personal statement personal. Another thing that Dr. Matt Williams said that really helped me was to think like a toddler and really embrace your inner child's curiosity and excitement. Okay, so now we come to the stage of actually writing your personal statement. A personal statement that is personal and unique to you and your supercurricular adventures and your journey as a whole. Let's begin with the structure of the personal statement. Before, the personal statement didn't really have too much formalized guidance, other than it had to be a maximum of 4,000 characters total, including spaces. Now, the personal statement has been broken down into 3 smaller questions that provide more guidance and structure, each of which have to be a minimum of 350 characters, but the maximum of 4,000 characters total still applies. The first question is, why do you want to study this course or subject? The second is, how have your qualifications and studies helped you prepare for this course or subject? And the third is, what else have you done to prepare outside of your education, and why are these experiences useful? UCAS has said, though, that the expectations of what you write in your personal statement have remained mainly unchanged, which you can kind of tell through how these questions are really similar to the ones that Dr. Matt Williams said, which I mentioned at the beginning of this video. When I wrote my personal statement, it was before all of these changes, but some of the lessons I learned when it came to structuring the personal statement will still hopefully be useful. However, please do go and look at advice from different universities, colleges, etc. about how you can make the most out of this new structure and where to focus most of your writing. So, when it came to writing the personal statement, the general advice that we were given was to have an 80-20 balance between supercurricular and extracurricular. For when you talk about your supercurricular journey, don't be afraid to include details on what you think, and for your extracurriculars, it's nice to link your extracurriculars to your supercurricular journey if that actually did influence your supercurricular journey, or to transferable skills to the degree. With the new structure, though, you're also going to have to dedicate at least 350 characters to talking about your formal education and studies and how these have helped you prepare to study your subject at university. Beyond the new structure and rough 80-20 balance, though, the way you structure your personal statement, I think, is very much up to you and what you think is best. Your school may give you a formula for a personal statement that has been, in quotes, tried and tested, and is probably a good formula. However, don't feel hindered to stick to it exactly, because you don't want your personal statement to be like everyone else's. You don't want it to be impersonal, uninteresting, and forgettable. So, my advice for structuring your personal statement is to follow any advice and tips you're given from trustworthy people and sources, but don't feel constrained to a specific formula. Trust your own intuition and use your own supercurricular journey as a guide. Take the academics in the department on your journey. Dr. Matt Williams also gives some other advice about structuring your personal statement that I still think will be helpful with the new changes. Firstly, he said to have clear beginnings, middles, and ends, since that will make it a lot easier for the admissions people and tutors to follow your supercurricular journey. For the beginnings, it could be good to have a hook. For the ends, it could be good to link to the beginning and have a cyclical structure. For both the beginnings and ends, it could be good to make them personal and focused on your subject. Something supercurricular about why you wanted to study the subject, your aspirations, etc. This is because these sections are most memorable, and you'd want the people considering your application to remember who you are and their envisioning of you studying the subject at university and thriving. It's also good to have connections and bridges in your personal statement that are organic, genuine, and authentic to your supercurricular journey, because that way you can really take the people reading your personal statement on your supercurricular journey. So, I've been going on talking about the importance of making your personal statement personal, but how do you actually make it personal? This was something I really struggled with when I gave in the first draft of my own personal statement. One of my biology teachers told me that it was impersonal and like lemonade that has lost its fizz and bubbles. I needed to add fizz, bubbles, and an umbrella to my personal statement. So I went about on ways to try and make my personal statement more personal to me, and here were some of the ways I was able to do that. Firstly, I really tried to embrace my own curiosity and the opportunity to go on my own unique supercurricular adventure. Next, I really tried to take initiative and be independent in my supercurricular journey. I shared my own personal observations, experiences, and questions. I shared my own hypotheses, thoughts, and thought processes. I traced key ideas and themes throughout my personal statement, and I also really tried to write with my own voice, using language and vocabulary that was unique to me. And I also talked a little bit about my extracurriculars. And hopefully you'll be better able to understand what I mean by all of these when I go over my own personal statement soon. And once you've written the first draft of your personal statement, you move on to the editing and redrafting stage. One of the biggest lessons I learned when it came to editing my personal statement was to make my sentences short and easy to read, because then it will make it a lot easier for the admissions people to follow your supercurricular journey and your ideas. I use Grammarly to help me with this, but you could use any other grammar or spelling checker. In addition to this, I also had to cut a lot of my personal statement, and something that really helped me when it came to cutting my personal statement to within the character count was the So What test, which I learned again from Dr. Matt Williams. And this was asking myself at the end of every sentence, phrase, word, and paragraph, so what? How does this answer the questions that form the purpose of the personal statement? How is this helping me stand out? Some other things that helped me cut my personal statement to the character count was removing unnecessary adverbs, adjectives, and determiners, using shorter words, using colons and semicolons instead of conjunctions at times, not leaving entire line gaps between my paragraphs, and restricting paragraph breaks to my beginning, middle, and end. Another thing I wanted to talk about was to really embrace the feedback that you're given from your teachers and other people with experience in the admissions process. Try not to get too attached to your first draft and embrace redrafting as an opportunity to make your personal statement incredible. My personal statement went through 3 major overhauls and a lot of smaller changes in between and throughout the whole process. And if I didn't embrace the feedback that my personal statement was like flat lemonade and I had to make it a lot more personal, I don't think I would have been able to get in and be making this video right now. Finally, if there's anything you do want to include in your application that you don't have space to include in your personal statement, you could potentially consider politely asking your reference writer if they could include it in their reference. For example, things like Olympiad competitions, volunteering, and other work experience. Okay, so now I will be going through and analysing my own personal statement to share how I applied everything I have just talked about. The first thing I did when going through my personal statement again for this video was highlighting it based on 4 categories, which I think was very insightful. I've highlighted engagement, analysis, and critical thinking in pink, supercurricular exploration in blue, mentions of why I want to study my subject, future hopes and aspirations in green, and finally extracurriculars in yellow. The majority of my personal statement was dedicated to engagement, analysis, and critical thinking, which I hope communicates just how important it is that you give yourself the space to really display how you've engaged with your subject, rather than just listing off as many things as possible. Even with my extracurriculars, I really try to develop them with my own perspective. After this, supercurricular exploration took up the most words, followed by why I want to study my subject, future hopes and aspirations, and finally, extracurriculars. Another pattern that this highlights was how I mentioned why I want to study biology, future hopes and aspirations in at least once in almost every paragraph, not just at the beginning and end. And I think this was really nice because it continuously showed my excitement to study biology and continuously gave the tutors reading my personal statement opportunities to envision myself thriving as a biology student and beyond. And now I will be going through my own personal statement, paragraph by paragraph, analysing it a little bit, and hopefully that will help show how I've applied everything I've been talking about into my own personal statement. So, my introductory paragraph. Visiting my family in India after 7 years, I was struck by the suffering of countless stray yet supposedly worshipped cows. It took me a while to get to this, but I was really happy with this being the start of my personal statement, because it starts my personal statement with a supercurricular exploration, with a subject focus, and this real-world observation shows my engagement with my subject. This first sentence is also really personal to me and my supercurricular journey. Delving into human-wildlife conflict, I realized how destruction, in this case culling, could create good in the natural world. What this actually involved within my supercurricular journey was researching and listening to podcasts about the human-wildlife conflict of cows in Indian urban areas, as well as watching lots of David Attenborough documentaries. I could have mentioned that. However, these were part of the initial exploration stage in my supercurricular journey and did not involve me formally engaging with my subject pretending to be a university student, so I chose not to include it. Simply saying that I looked into this area was enough. I followed this with how this exploration shifted my perspective about biology and the natural world, displaying my critical engagement with my subject. It reminded me of how wolf rewilding at Yellowstone reversed ecosystemic degradation. I began appreciating how myopia blinds us from the value of complex natural relationships and the magic and ecological butterfly effects. Here, I continue to engage with my subject and was not afraid to give detail about my own thoughts and how I link these two topics together. I also put butterfly effects in quotation marks because that is my own voice. The technical term for ecological butterfly effects is trophic cascades. However, throughout my whole supercurricular journey, I had been referring to them as ecological butterfly effects, and I thought this captured the sense of magic and awe I had at this phenomenon a lot more, so I chose to include that instead. And including this instead of the technical term trophic cascades was another way of making my own personal statement more personal to me. Studying biology, I aspire to make the most out of the transformative power and opportunity in understanding these phenomena. This ends my introduction with why I want to study biology, meaning that by the end of the first paragraph, I've already answered the first two key questions that the personal statement should answer: why I want to study my subject, and how have I evidenced my enthusiasm. And now onto paragraph 2. Presenting at my school's biosoc on polyps zooxanthellae symbiosis and climate-induced damage, I became intrigued by how thermotolerance variation in conspecific coral was not due to gene mutation as I first thought, but rather phenotypic plasticity. I'm particularly happy with this because it shows two things. First, it shows university-style engagement with my subject through presentation, which my first paragraph hadn't yet, and it takes the person reading my personal statement on a journey showing the evolution and development of my understanding and thoughts. To better understand, I read chapters of phenotypic plasticity and diversity in insects and developmental plasticity in evolution. Alongside Noble's harnessing stochasticity, it made me reconsider evolution beyond neo-Darwinism, how physiological stochasticity, combined with ideas in extended evolutionary synthesis, affect adaptation and evolution via guided processes rooted in randomness. Here, I continue to show university-style engagement through reading undergraduate-level textbooks and research papers, and continue to take the person reading my personal statement on a journey of my supercurricular adventures and thoughts. Grasping mathematical modeling's insight, I want to study its biological applications further. This ends the paragraph, again returning to my aspirations, this time within the degree itself. For me, this was also another way of making it personal. I didn't study maths at A-level, but knew how foundational it was to science and the scientific process, which made me really excited to see how we can use maths to aid the process of scientific discovery. And now onto paragraph 3. I traced these ideas at Oxford's Woodham Summer School when researching how climate change impacts plant microorganism symbiosis. I found that pre-adaptation of environment-inherited microbes affects phenotypic plasticity and fitness in new climates. I learned how climate change triggers stochastic bacteria reproduction, altering symbiosis dynamics and conversion between beneficial and harmful relationships. This shows further supercurricular university-style engagement, and I was really happy with this as well because the topic that we chose to research tied together concepts and areas in biology that I was already looking into and excited about. It allowed me to synthesize new connections between these areas, which deepened my understanding. I also think it created a sense of cohesion in my personal statement and a personal line of interest. And again, I'm showing what I learned without being afraid to go into detail. I presented these findings with my peers, whom I still enjoy collaborating and sharing biology epiphanies with. I included this to highlight not only how the summer school enhanced my skills in these areas, but also how much I enjoy discussing biology and collaborating with others to solve biological mysteries, which at Oxford you'd have to do lots of, especially with the weekly tutorials. Similar to butterfly effects, I chose the phrase biology epiphanies and put it in quotation marks because it is from my own voice, because this was how I personally referred to these light bulb moments that we had, which was another way of making my personal statement personal to me. And now onto my fourth paragraph. That cable bacteria symbiosis limits methane emissions by inhibitor mechanisms showed me the potential of microbes in facing global threats. The political and legislative cooperation needed when implementing such solutions inspired me to found my school's Solving Global Challenges project, inviting interdisciplinary approaches to world issues. This builds upon my explorations into coral reef and plant microorganism symbiosis and continues to show engagement with my subject, what I learned and how that inspired what I did next, taking the tutors reading my personal statement on my own personal supercurricular journey. Starting the Solving Global Challenges project was also something I was really excited about, because in the 21st century, solving global challenges should involve collaboration, cooperation, and synergy between different fields. This is something I really believe in and am passionate about, so including this project in my personal statement meant I could share that personal perspective, make my personal statement more personal, and also show my proactivity and initiative. The co-evolutionary arms race driving AMR led me to write an essay on that between rough-skinned newts and garter snakes, exploring how abundance and behavior shifts pose it. Alongside cable bacteria, it made me wonder if inhibiting resistance protein abundance poses AMR, which I learned occurs by DSBA enzyme inhibition. This section continues to show university-style engagement with my subject through the essay I wrote, and it continues to share my thought processes and how my previous supercurricular journeys influenced my curiosity. Decoding connections between areas of life paves way for scientific progress. I hope to partake in this. I finished the paragraph again returning to my aspirations within biology and science, and I also share another relevant personal perspective, making my personal statement more personal. And now on to my fifth paragraph. The evolutionary interplay of these relationships drew me to interspecific true altruism, which gene-central survival of the fittest arguments inconclusively explain. Applying Noble's ideas and proposed explanations from deconstructing the moral animal stigma, I thought, could this be an evolved stochastic response to the sustenance of life itself, requiring contrary to competition, cooperation, and kindness? This part of my supercurricular journey involved me really challenging myself and trying to analyze everything I have been learning. I was really proud to be able to write this because it shows not only my engagement with my subject, but also my willingness to make hypotheses, think critically for myself, and be brave enough to share those thoughts that I came up with, even if they weren't correct. And through this, I continue to take the tutor reading my personal statement on my own personal supercurricular journey, sharing how my thoughts and perspectives changed and how my previous adventures inspired my curiosity. Aware of my bold haste, I read into systems biology, coming across the potentially game-changing theories of entropic selection and survival of the fitted. I was happy to include this as well because it showed another character attribute that I think is important when it comes to science: humility, an acceptance that one may not always be correct, and an openness to other arguments and alternative ideas. While I recognize the need for more empirical research, it has enhanced my excitement to learn and contribute to our ever-changing understanding of evolution. This shows another attribute and skill linked to my course, the ability to analyze the credibility and validity of different arguments and ideas, rather than simply accepting everything you come across as 100% true. And I again return to my aspirations within science and biology as I close this paragraph. Including the phrase ever-changing as well also shows my understanding of how science is not stagnant, but dynamic and constantly progressing, and how our job is to be open to new ideas, but also to critically analyze them before coming to informed conclusions. And now on to my final paragraph. As a pupil support mentor, prefect and tutor, I've honed my resilience and science communication skills. Here, I link my extracurriculars to transferable skills and character attributes that will help me study the degree. Exploring the human experience through art, like my installation on how we view trees, has deepened my appreciation of the natural world and how connections shape identity. The arts and English literature are very important to me and have been foundational in making me who I am today, shaping my perspective about the world and life. Talking a little bit about that was another way I tried to make my personal statement more personal to me. Studying biology demystifies the connections beyond humans, including those of the global ecosystem and evolution. I want to harness these connections in an act of anthropogenic redemption that, if done right, I believe will not be limited to true altruism, but also benefit humanity through these incredible biological butterfly effects. I conclude my personal statement returning again to a clear subject focus on biology and my aspirations within biology and beyond the degree. I share another relevant personal perspective, I talk about what I wish to do with the skills and knowledge I will gain by studying biology, and I talk about the impact I want to have in the world. I also trace some key ideas I talked about earlier in my personal statement, and finally return to the beginning of my personal statement with butterfly effects, all of which were ways I tried to end my personal statement and make it cohesive and personal to me. And that is how I wrote a successful Oxford Biology personal statement. Thank you to my teachers, to Dr. Matt Williams, to the Oxford Wadham College Climate Change Summer School team, and everyone else who's already posted videos about the personal statement on YouTube for sharing this advice and helping me write a successful personal statement. If you're applying to university this year, I'm wishing you all the very, very best. And if you have any questions about the personal statement or university applications in general, feel free to write them in the comment section and I'll do my best to respond. And if you're already in university and are on the other side of this application process, feel free to share any advice advice that I left out in the comment section as well. Let's empower this next generation of university students and big dreamers together. If you found this video helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could give it a like and share it with other people who you think would find it helpful, so it can reach as many people as possible. And as always, I am proud of you, and I believe in you and your worth and your unlimited potential and your ability to do incredible things in life. Sending you so much joy and light.